Hi, it's Dwyer, DwyerBoxingNews.com, GamblersAdvisory.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. You know, there are two different types of athletes. Let's just get philosophical for the first few minutes of this video. You have the kind of guy who has the talent and he has the discipline and he tries to maximize both. He's hardworking. He gets into a routine where he's always at his best. Right? I'm talking about Jerry Rice, Hank Aaron, Peyton Manning. Right? You know, these guys are always going to be prepared. It's unthinkable to even imagine that any of that personality type would show up to an event out of shape, unprepared, unmotivated. Right? Being consistently great is what defines them. So, a Jerry Rice not only sets records, he was at his best arguably in the biggest games. Right? Former Super Bowl MVP. Hank Aaron, keep in mind, if you take away his home runs, Hank Aaron still set the record for the most RBIs in Major League history. During the dead ball era, Hank Aaron hit 307 for his career. Right? We're talking about a great player on many levels. Right? Peyton Manning has a Super Bowl ring, is great in terms of accuracy, is great in terms of quarterback rating. Needless to say, you know Peyton Manning is going to get his teams in the playoffs, right? He got injured. He misses a year. Indianapolis, worst team in the league. But understand, for athletes like that, whose motivation is to be in the record books, there's another group of athletes. Right? These guys are no less talented. In some cases, they're even more talented. But their motivation is different. Right? They don't want to be icons. They're men about town. Right? For them, ability is just a way for them to live life in a fuller, more enjoyable way. Right? They have the talent. They'll perform at a superstar level, but they'll show up out of shape. They'll show up with an attitude problem. Despite the talent, you'll notice that some of these guys end up on multiple teams. Right? Some other guys we'll hear after they retire about drinking problems, late night affairs. Right? A guy who privately was different than the public persona. And sometimes the guy even lets his private life out in the street. And I'm talking about not Jerry Rice, but Randy Moss. Right? Not Hank Aaron, but Mickey Mantle. Not Peyton Manning, but Joe Namath. You know the type I'm talking about. We all know people like this. Right? They're great, but they don't want to be Jerry Rice. Right? Now, what if Floyd Mayweather, who in my opinion is a Jerry Rice type, he wants to be great. He knows who Ray Robinson is. He wants people to consider him in that class, if not the best ever. He's always in shape. He studies opponents, right? You know, strip away everything else. You understand that Floyd Mayweather trains awfully hard for fights. I'm sure as I make this video, he's in shape right now and he doesn't even publicly have a fight scheduled. Now, could you imagine how life would be different if Floyd Mayweather was actually a man about town? If Floyd Mayweather had the technical brilliance, in fact, had the talent, but had a problem being disciplined to the point where he couldn't even make weight for some of the biggest fights of his career. Could you imagine Floyd Mayweather showing up and being not 1 or 2 pounds overweight? How about 7, 8, or 9 pounds overweight for a fight? Well, let me tell you, in a sport like boxing, if Floyd were that way, he'd be punished because too much money's involved. Right? This isn't team sports where an eccentric like Mickey Mantle, after a late night where everyone in the dugout knows he's hungover, can kind of like hide behind teammates, where there's structure, where Mickey Mantle has games with start times, where there are people on the team who can look out for him, right? Who can shield him from the public. In boxing, you don't have teammates in the ring. It's you. It's a one-on-one sport. So promoters don't want to deal with guys who can't make weight, who, for big fights, whether the opponent is Nate Campbell, whether it's Ali Funeka for titles, if you're showing up and you can't make weight, like Joan Guzman couldn't make weight to fight Nate Campbell, and the fight gets canceled. Understand, it costs money to rent that arena. Somebody's paying for it, right? The promoter takes a loss, or an insurance company takes a loss. You got corporate sponsors, right? They're expecting to have their name on the ring apron, right? They might even have their representatives at the weigh-in, right? Girls with the name of a beer across their bodies, right? The sponsors involved. Sponsors don't like to deal with fighters who cause events to be canceled, not because of sparring injuries, but because of a lack of preparation, right? Announcers, HBO, Showtime, they hate fighters who cause cards that have been advertised to subscribers, their customers, their lifeblood, to get canceled, right? Fighters like that are hated despite the talent level. Let me just tell you, Joan Guzman, in my opinion, is one of the elite talents in the sport of boxing, right? People know I consider Floyd Mayweather's main strength to be his understanding of the sport, his mental approach. He sees things others don't, right? That's the same thing with Joan Guzman. I can tell you, obviously Floyd Mayweather is in shape and he's better prepared physically than Joan Guzman, but I can't say Floyd Mayweather is more talented, right? Guzman, even when he's out of shape, has a sense of balance on him that's stunning. It's Pernell Whitaker-esque, right? In terms of counterpunching, hard to imagine a better counterpuncher than Joan Guzman. Let me just say, too, Guzman is that rare fighter who can look at you. He actually wants to engage you. He'll be smiling and gesturing at you during the fight. For him, it's a chess match. The way he's wired, he's just naturally adaptive, reactive. In fact, I don't want to use the word naturally. Maybe he had to work to get it. But all I'm saying is he's at a very high level. So high that despite a career in which he's underachieved, right? Take the Ali Funeka fight. That was a title fight for Ali Funeka, right? It wasn't for Guzman. Guzman wouldn't have qualified for that weight or the weight above it, right? Compared to him, Adrian Broner's small potatoes in terms of missing weight. But I can say this, Guzman, when he's right, he's a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. He's unbeaten as I make this video. Think about that. Right? He's unbeaten. Let me say this, though. In full disclosure, I believe I saw him lose a fight. That first Ali Funeka fight, I believe he lost. But even in that fight, he had his moments. Look at the 12th round of that fight. The judges scored that fight a draw. He has one draw, no defeats. Now the people for Khabib Allakhverdiev, who's unbeaten. To avoid pronouncing his last name again, I'll just call him Khabib. Believe that they found the perfect name for their unbeaten fighter to steamroll. Right? Because Guzman, what can you say? He's like Joe Namath. He's a man about town. Great talent, in his opinion. That talent has gotten him to a position where he can go to the club, where he can stay out late at night. Waitress comes by, offers him dessert. Why wouldn't he take it? Isn't this the point of having talent? It's not to live a monk's life like Jerry Rice, where his ex-wife says they never took a vacation. No, Joan Guzman is fighting so he can be on a permanent vacation. Right? Well, let me just say this. I view this fight as a mismatch. I don't know what the odds are. I've looked for them. I can't find them. But I view the fight as a mismatch. Right? I've looked at Khabib. I've seen the knockout he had of Ignacio Mendoza. I saw the knockout he had of Kaiser Mabusa. Understand that neither of those guys, and those are his biggest wins, neither of those guys remotely approaches the problems he's going to face from Joan Guzman. Now, I know Guzman is 36 years old. Fair enough. I know Guzman has had opportunities and has blown it. But understand, he had a major title. He was the super featherweight title. If you want to see the talent level I'm talking about, and it's A-level talent, take a look at his fight against Humberto Soto. That's a classic. Guzman is clearly a step up from Humberto Soto. Right? I saw him in a fight against a guy named Pabon. Let me tell you, Guzman, at his best. That was this year. Guzman figures out that he can hit Pabon in the ribs with a right hand. He then starts dropping that right hand. Right? Guzman is a guy who literally is thinking at 100 miles an hour. Let me say this. The only other fighter I've seen who has this mix of understanding, execution, where he can see punches and handle it, combined with a lack of discipline in recent memory, is James Toney. Right? Now he's fighting a southpaw. Let me tell you about Guzman. Guzman, who's orthodox, can actually fight southpaw. And Guzman knows the angles. I don't want to oversell Guzman, but let's just say I'd be very surprised if Khabib is able to make this fight close. Right? I'll just say this. Khabib doesn't have the volume or the length that Ali Funeka had to give Guzman a hard time. If I were a matchmaker at these networks, one of the fights I'd want to see would be Adrian Broner against Guzman. I can tell you that Guzman, and again, think Mickey Mantle, Guzman would enter that fight firmly believing that he has a technical advantage on Adrian Broner. And quite frankly, he might be right. Right? Let me just say that Guzman is different than a Roy Jones. And that Roy Jones was a great athlete who, as he got to his late 30s, fell apart. Guzman's different. Guzman actually is a technician with athleticism. So Guzman should be able to block most of the punches. And Guzman has a vertical game. Now, I agree. Guzman is past his prime. This Guzman would lose to the Guzman of a few years ago. But don't kid yourself. Some youngster like Khabib, and I understand he's late 20s, who thinks that he's going to be able to just find Guzman, and because he's a southpaw, land that straight left. He's kidding himself. You know, what I'm expecting is for him to understand somewhere around the third round that he's actually in the deep end of the pool. That boxing has some people who might not be popular with promoters or networks who are championship level fighters. Understand, if you're Al Heyman and you're advising Adrian Broner on who to fight, you don't want him within 10 feet of Joan Guzman. You don't even want Guzman's name mentioned around your fighter. Too much risk, not good risk reward. You would rather have Broner fight the Tony DeMarcos of the world than fight a guy like this, right? As I said before, Guzman's unbeaten. I'd love to see Guzman against Robert Guerrero. I'd love to see Guzman, quite frankly, against Floyd Mayweather. In fact, Mayweather might be a better fight for him because Guerrero has some length on him. My point to you, though, is don't believe the hype. You're going to hear a lot of terrible things about Guzman, missing weight and stuff like that. And yeah, it's true. But don't sleep on the talent. Right? Let me just say, you know, we can criticize guys for a lack of discipline. Not everyone is Bernard Hopkins. Not everyone is Marvin Hagler. Right? What matters here, and it's what every gambler needs to focus on, is whether Guzman makes weight and whether he looks healthy when he makes weight. If Guzman makes weight and is healthy, understand, in my opinion, he should win this fight. I like Guzman. Style-wise, I'll just say this. Khabib does some interesting things. He can lead with his left hand, which is great, right? He actually can move a little bit. But the point is, he's accustomed to taking you out up top. I don't think he's going to know what to do with a fighter who can intuitively neutralize the left hand. In fact, let me go one step further. Guzman's going to come in, and Guzman's going to have, he's one of these guys who has his left hand up. It's almost at a 90-degree angle. And he's going like this, knocking down your lead punch. He's daring you to throw your dominant hand, right? That's how he would fight a southpaw. Now, I'll give Khabib credit. He throws a very straight and hard left. But all I'm saying is you need more than that to beat Joan Guzman. Understand, officially, no one has. I'm expecting Guzman to figure out the angles to take away Khabib's body and then to have fun with him. I know Guzman was better at lower weights, but let me tell you, power is one of the last things to go. Guzman was able to stop his last opponent. He still has a punch. He's that rare fighter who can take you out up top or who can take away your body. Right? I just don't think that Khabib has the length, the volume, the angles to beat Joan Guzman. Right? Guzman should be fighting the Adrian Broners of the world, and he would be if he had the discipline to make weight against Nate Campbell and against Ali Faneka and others. Right? He didn't. Promoters are afraid of him. That doesn't mean that he lacks talent. I like Guzman in this one. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. I think Guzman, this is a battle of unbeatens. I think Guzman is the only one who leaves with that intact. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments. I understand Khabib is big in Russia. Understand, too, there's a location dynamic here. Khabib is coming to the United States to fight Guzman in Florida, right? He has to cross the ocean to make the fight. His people apparently think that it's worth it. I believe he's going to find out that America isn't as friendly to unbeaten fighters as they think it is. Let me hear from you. Thanks for watching.